Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Public Speaking Lessons Learned, brought to us by the FPSA Young Professionals Group and the Women's Alliance Network. My name is Elena Sierra, and I'm the Director of Networks and Special Projects for FPSA. Before I pass it to our moderator today, here are a couple of housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on the FPSA website after today's session. You can submit questions at any point in time during the discussion through your pane window where it shows you in the question box. Our moderator today is Nehemiah White, Vice Chair of the Food Safety Network. Nehemiah is also the Market Manager for Deville Technologies, where in addition to his other duties, he provides sanitary and hygienic design training for both industry groups and various other teams. Take it away, Nehemiah.
Thanks a ton, Elena. I appreciate it. Thanks for the introduction, and really excited to be here with a really solid panel of and with some solid experience in the public speaking field. We're going to hear some really neat stories today and hear some really critical advice for anyone in the entire spectrum. So let me start by just introducing our panelists. First off is Maria Nardone. Maria is a psychologist, psychoanalyst, organizational consultant, and has pretty extensive experience in healthcare, education, and industry within the US and Europe. Her consulting experiences include coaching senior executives all the way up to Fortune 500 companies, both legal and nonprofit organizations, executive assessments, stress management, and team development. Her clients range anywhere from corporate leaders, doctors, engineers, family business owners, investment bankers, and entrepreneurs. So Maria is she's got quite an extensive resume and gets quite involved in executive coaching, public speaking being a major part. One last point, she's also a psychological expert witness in immigration cases. Second panelist is Mike Alagna. He has retired as a COO, Chief Operations Officer from Nation Pizza and Food. He served for 24 years at Nation Pizza, prior to that serving in other food processing capabilities. Currently is working with Harper College and other associations to promote manufacturing in the US. Third panelist is Andrew Merkins. He is a Business Development Director for Kiewit Industrial Group. He's got more than 15 years of experience in the construction industry, covering quite a wide variety of markets. In his current role, he's responsible for multiple key clients in both the food and beverage markets, as well as industrial markets. He is a part of the FPSA family as a co-chair of the FPSA Young Professionals Groups. He leads their professional development committee. And last but not least is our fourth panelist, Matt Hartman. Many of you are familiar with him. He is the Senior Account Manager at Blentech. He is also our FPSA Network's Leadership Team Chairman. He is a registered professional engineer in the state of Indiana. He's extensive experience in automation, controls, engineering, dating back to the early 90s. So Matt, he's worked as a control engineer, senior engineer, project manager, manager of engineering, and business development. So as you can see, just from the introductions to our panelists, we have quite a spread of talent here. It ranges all the way from less experience to more experience. So I'm very excited to get started with welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nehemiah.
Thank you.
What we'll do is get started off with a poll. And Elena, if you wouldn't mind launching that poll. And the question, as you'll see pop up in just a moment, what would you rather do? Obviously, our topic for the day is public speaking. And what would you rather do than public speak? So, some humorous ones, but if at the end of your day, what would you rather do out of all of these?
Looks like we have responses, so I'll close it. And 1, 2, 3.
it looks like no one wants a root canal.
Wow.
Everyone would rather public speak than get a root canal, but file tax returns, I guess it's not as painful. Fried tarantula, that one surprises me. I would love to hear the feedback on that one directly. So the reason we're having this, I mean, there's so many different reasons that you would have a public speaking conversation, right? A panel. But a major reason is that there can be some considerable angst, whether you're experienced or not inexperienced, with the idea, just the idea of public speaking, not even to speak of the actual act of public speaking. So what I'll do is I want to make sure that we're all on the same page on what we're talking about, because there's a lot of forms of communication, and virtual has really kind of melded everything together, right? Every form of communication has found some sort of virtual environment. So when it comes to public speaking is, what we're talking about here is the act or process of making speeches in public. So it's mostly a monodirectional. So you are giving the primary message, the feedback is limited. So that's the primary method of communication that we're speaking of here. To get started, I would like to, we're going to get into some storytelling, but we have yet another poll that I want to just throw out there of what fear do you most identify with when it comes to public speaking? So when you think of public speaking, what is the primary thing that just gets your pulse racing or makes your stomach fill with butterflies?
All right, gonna close the poll in 1, 2, 3. Sure.
Okay, so it's a little evenly divided, honestly. I mean, fear of technology, most of us have a lot more experience with technology at this point. Forgetting something, saying something incorrectly, the top two, and then, or fear of time kind of ranked after that. So forgetting what you're gonna say, I resonate with that entirely. And what I'm interested in is to now hear some real life stories of from our panel, and I'm going to start. I'm going to start with Mike. And the question of the day, the first question that we want to kind of give some attention to is, for you, thinking back through your history, what was your turning point for you when in starting public speaking? So what was kind of the initial launch into it for it? And as it relates to that, what were some of the struggles and primary struggles and weaknesses that you had to overcome in that initial launch into public speaking?
Well, that happened about 12, 14 years ago, when I was used to going to seminars and panels and that. And I was at one where a government official said manufacturing was dead. We were not going to spend any money on training for them. And I got so incensed by it that I did confront her with that. And I decided that I had to get involved in the manufacturing training process. And so the Schaumburg Business Association and Harper College were both getting into that at the time. And they asked me to participate in putting together programs that would help train people and also inform people. And so that went on until about 2 years ago. That was after I retired. And we held training sessions with up to 175 people, both people from industry and people that supplied industry. And it's kind of interesting that one of the fears I had, learning how to do it well, was forgetting what I was going to say, one of your questions. You need to be relative expert. And what stops you from being that is your flow and being nervous about what you're going to say. So my opinion is you overcome that by a lot of practice.
Really good. So from your own experience, I would have expected personally, you've been in the industry for many years. You were a CEO for a long time. And I would expect that your public speaking experience had started when you were younger. But what you expressed was that your public speaking started long after you had a lengthy career in the food industry, which is a really helpful perspective. And you pointing out that you want to be pretty accurate, right, in conveying why manufacturing is important. There's investment on the line, right?
Yes.
So it's really helpful. Andrew, for yourself, what was kind of your launching point, and what were some of the biggest things that you had to overcome?
So I guess my launching point was more of I was voluntold I was going to speak at our district meeting. So it's kind of an initiation in moving up into your career. So some of it has to do with time management and understanding your time, and which, as we alluded to in your survey there, time was my big one. I like to talk and I like to cover a lot of information in a short amount of time. But if you go too fast and you're nervous, you crush your time too early, and then you have people standing and waiting for too long. So time was my big one. And then the other one was how many people were in the audience. I had a really good trainer that helped me out and walked through it with me and said, hey, all of these people are here to listen to you, not for the other way around. You're not there to technically appease them. You're there to give them the information, to communicate, and to run that dialogue. So having that opportunity went well for me the first time. There was a lot of training and a lot of practice behind it all. I guess my big one for everybody is if you're going to speak in public, make sure you practice relentlessly. It eliminates all of those extra little items and things that you're going to think about. Sounds kind of funny, but the easiest way to do it is in the car when you're driving to work and back from work. Have a few sticky notes and cover your speech over and over again. The people you're riding with might not like the speech all the time, but it's a good way to get critique as well, as long as you're willing to take critique.
That's great. So based off of kind of where your launching point was, how many years roughly would you say you've been public speaking?
I'd say my first time that I did an actual public speaking in front of the group was 2012. Then 2012 to 2016 was a pretty standard person to be on the panel at our district meeting, talking in front of all those big groups of people, sometimes in the smaller segments, so ranging between 35 to 300-ish in the big group setting. And then when I transitioned from there, it's all about training your replacement, right? So if you have the opportunity to train someone, you also improve on your ability to speak. So the last few years, I've been teaching other people how to speak in front of groups and understanding their quirks. Are they putting their hands in their pockets? Or do they have the pen and they like to click? It's the little quirky things that people don't notice that they're doing until you run through and you start understanding your typical way of speaking in front of people.
It's about 8 years then. You've been, it's kind of your tenure so far. Well, Matt, we've got some, I love your story, so I'm going to save it for last. Okay. I want to hear from, Maria and get an idea of what was your launching point? Where did you really start this whole aspect? There's some interesting details about, I guess, you personally, your personality that would also help here for the audience.
Sure. Thanks, Nehemiah. Well, it was about 10 years into my career, and I'm in a different industry than the rest of you. So I was coming from private practice where I was working with people one-on-one, and now had a new job in a medical school where I was teaching medical students. And as part of my role, I was also asked to give what they call grand rounds. And grand rounds is when everybody from the department comes to the meeting. So it's in a big auditorium. There are doctors, nurses, in my case, OBGYN, there were midwives, all different disciplines, and it was a large group. Also, I'm a psychologist in a medical department, so I felt a bit intimidated, and it was scary the first time. I was afraid some of the things that you're talking about, that I would say things incorrectly, or that mostly that it would be a tough audience and I would be challenged. I think it's very important to know your audience. And if we can also imagine that this lecture was always at 9 o'clock in the morning and the residents had been up all night, so inevitably there were, I would say about 20% of the audience that might be asleep. So it could be very challenging, not to mention that, you know, the director of the department was there and there were a lot of important people. But I learned over time that practice was really important. Knowing the material very well was important. Some of the same things that Andrew mentioned. I think I'd also like to mention to people who are just starting out that being nervous is also natural and can actually help you get geared up and get excited about what you're talking about. And in terms of what in terms of what I had to overcome, I tend to be more of a sort of a quiet, introverted person. I'm not someone who naturally likes to be the center of attention. So for me, personality-wise, that was something I had to overcome. And I learned to watch other people that I thought did it very well. I used to attend meetings on leadership, and generally the public speakers at those leadership meetings were terrific speakers. So I tried to watch and to learn from other people that I thought did a great job.
That's fantastic. I mean, that's a really helpful perspective, because the personality thing is helpful, honestly, Maria, because it can be tempting to think that if I'm an introvert or I'm more of an introverted person, that it's going to be more difficult to do public speaking. But from your experience and from your story, it just had to do with correctly analyzing your audience. You had quite a diverse audience, and that's challenging. And it was analyzing the audience, but also listening to seeing other people and how they did it. So it didn't.
And I also think, I also think it was important for me to take it in as part of my identity, that this is now part of me, that I wasn't just the quiet person, but that I could command attention and to get comfortable with that. And that comes from practice, and anybody can learn that. I think that's the other important thing, and that I practiced in some ways in teaching. It was, not 75 people, but I had classes of 25, and that's a practice on the way up to the larger group, which I think is very helpful as well.
Really helpful, very helpful. So you would say, like, years wise, roughly how long have you been public speaking?
Oh, since that first grand rounds, about 28 years.
Okay. So I mean, we're finding that the like the length of time doesn't have to do with length of career, as in Mike's experience, and it's all over the spectrum. So thank you so much, Matt. Please share with us what got you into public speaking and what you had to overcome.
Thanks, Nehemiah. Yeah, for me, I think it was around the 2000 timeline or so. I was having to give a presentation, and at the time I was a project manager, and I had to give a presentation. We did, my job was, we did the automation of jails, prisons, detention centers, and I had to give a presentation to the sheriff, Dick Pokema. I can remember him clearly. And all the building construction people were there, all the architects were there, and I had to go give a presentation on the automation system, the controls, how we were going to control this massive county jail. And I gave it, and I thought I did okay, man. And then after the presentation, Sheriff Pokema walked up to me, real, not he wasn't a sheriff kind of person, but he was a very calm demeanor. He walked up to me quietly and was like, Matt, have you ever heard of Toastmasters? And I'm going, no, is that like a drinking club or something? And he went, no, it's a public speaking club. I highly recommend you get involved. So at that point, I'm like, wow, I suck. Clearly, I suck at this. Clearly, it's part of my job, and I suck at this. And what I did was I thanked him. We ended up going out to dinner that evening and talking more about it. But I went back home and I found the local Toastmasters club, and it was at the YMCA, and they met every Wednesday morning, and it was like from 6 to 7, and it was one of the best experiences of my life, of having that crushing moment, right, of where you realize, I suck at this, and then giving advice on how to get better. And then what's wonderful about the Toastmasters group is it's in a safe place, and everybody gives you feedback. Everybody tells you about, the pen clicking. People tell you about your mannerisms. You get all this feedback in a safe place because you're all working together to get better at public speaking. So that's how I found myself really embracing, as Maria talked about, embracing that I am a public speaker. I want to be a public speaker. I need to be a public speaker for my career.
So what was the primary, two things I'll ask you to follow this up. So one thing, what was the primary thing that you had to overcome sucking at public speaking? And what was so that you were a great public speaker? And then what was, you look back 20 years, if you were standing with a sheriff and he told you, check out Toastmasters, and you could add anything as a word of advice, what would you tell you?
What I think happens nowadays, I guess the advice I would give nowadays, and I see it with my children, is they have this belief system that if just because you're not good at something today, that you can't be good at something tomorrow. And so what I would offer to people is we all sucked whenever we started. We all made epic failures whenever we started. We all, looked dumb whenever we started. And the advice I would give is, embrace that suck. Embrace it because that's part of the journey. And anytime that you have that in your life, it is probably something worth doing if you have to go through a suck part and then get to the other side where all of a sudden you're productive at it, you enjoy it. If you don't go through that, I'm not always sure it's worthwhile to even do.
That's really good. Like Jocko says, the obstacle is the way.
The obstacle is the way, and that gets back to Stoic thinking. Is the obstacle is the way. Exactly.
I would ask you, Mike, is knowing what you know now, right? You had the experience when you were well into your career of being able to get into public speaking and really having that positive feedback that you get as a public speaker. Is this something that you would have, looking back, that you would have wished you could have gotten started in earlier in your career? Or is there something more proactive that you would recommend your earlier career self to do as it regards public speaking?
Well, to do anything, whether it's public speaking, whether it's running a company, whatever it may be, to be very good at it, you have to have a passion for it. And if you did, as Matt was saying, if you don't have a passion for it, you probably ought to not do it, because you're not going to do it well. And public speaking, I didn't have a passion for that until the person said that manufacturing was dead, because I had such a passion for manufacturing. I've been doing it all my life, and I couldn't understand how someone could be that, excuse the expression, stupid. And I was out to prove that manufacturing wasn't dead, and in fact was a growing career path for a lot of people. And from that time on, it just got easier and easier for me to do. And no, it wasn't easy from the start. I had to practice. I was nervous. I had all the same bad habits as everybody else. But once you have that passion and you become a relative expert at what you're talking about, it flows. And you want to be the person in the room that can answer the questions and give people advice and a pathway to solve their problems.
It's really helpful in that, actually, Mike, because your public speaking career launched out of your passion. You had a message to convey. Andrew, Maria, and Matt, you all started kind of, it was almost a responsibility of your role, and you had to learn how to couple that passion with that directive. Whereas Mike's experience was it launched out of, you have a message to say. And I think both of those are, there's pluses and minuses on them both, right? So if you're launching out of passion, maybe you can make a lot of mistakes that you're not aware of at the very beginning. Whereas if you're launching out of directive, well, you study really hard and you're like, man, I got to really get this right because I got to impress my boss and all the shareholders and stuff. But maybe you can come across with a little lack of passion and more academic in presentation. So these are all extremely helpful stories that, as we look at, I know we have a lot of less tenured career people here on the webinar. And it's really helpful for like the young professionals group to look at this whole spread and say, here's what the experience has been across the entire spectrum, and these are the things that I need to look for. So I want to get into some success stories, but I want to ask our audience first, in your experience as an audience member, what do you think is the most important attribute of a public speaker? What's the one thing that when you're sitting in a public speech or thinking about yourself and what you think you need to get good at in your getting ready to give a presentation, what's that one thing that kind of identifies as you are the best public speaker, or the person that's in front of you is the best public speaker? This is interesting. It's fascinating. So closing in 2, we've got about 67% of the attendees that have voted. Just wait for the results. Overwhelmingly competent. Overwhelmingly, not even eloquent or what they look like. That's fascinating to me. That, and this goes back, reflecting on Maria and Andrew, you were afraid of saying the wrong thing. But what it sounds like is our audience says, I don't care if you say the wrong thing. I just want you to be confident when you're speaking to me. Because there's that trust aspect, right? That if the speaker doesn't look confident in what they're doing, you wonder if you can trust what they're saying. So that's a really interesting, I didn't expect that. Very fascinating. Any comments on that from any of you, all 4 of you, before we get into success stories? Any comments on that result?
I could see that totally. From the standpoint of, why is text messaging so challenging? Why is an email so challenging? Because you've stripped away like 93% of the message. We communicate as humans to each other with tonality, with body language, with inflections, how we move our head. All of this is part of how we deliver the message. And that's why texting is so difficult, because you like, what's the tonality? And we have troubles processing that. So I could see that, the confidence comes off as your tonality, your body language. Are you hunched over? Are you alert? Are your eyes open? That to me delivers that message of confidence above all what you actually said.
I completely agree with you, Matt. And I don't know if you guys can tell or not, but I'm standing while we're having our little presentation here. So this is the way that I feel the most comfortable. I've sat in panels and done presentations in front of large groups, and I would rather stand than sit. And some don't feel comfortable with that. So if you're with a panel and you're having that conversation, you need to make sure that you either learn to be comfortable sitting if everyone else is going to, or have a podium or something similar to that to get past it. But even in like virtual calls, this is where I'm at. I'm the most comfortable standing in front of an audience, and that's where I'm the most confident. So that's how and why I present this way.
I would agree with that, and I'm happen to be sitting right now, but I do feel that you feel a little bit more powerful and have better movement when you're standing. And I think in relationship to confidence is also presence, and one of the issues I was going to bring up is about presence. And one of the readings and videos that I found helpful was it's Dr. Amy Cuddy's book on presence and her TED Talk on presence. And I think, the movement and being confident and present is really important.
And I think that versus texting and emailing, an in-person presentation will solidify your position as either an expert or someone that really doesn't know what they're talking about. And people like to see that. There's such, my problem in today's world is there's such a little contact. Everything's done via email and text and Twitter and all the rest of that stuff. I remember I was on a panel and someone asked, well, Mike, how do you like to get your information? I said, I like you to call me and come see me. And they said, what about texting and emailing? I said, well, first of all, and I said, I don't like a text because I can't see your eyes. I can't see if you really believe what you're saying. So I always enjoyed that the personal contact, and also seminars I attended, being able to see whether that person really knew, had the confidence of what they were saying.
It's really good. Yeah, it's fascinating how much confidence factors into that. And I would wonder, think about it for a little bit. You've spoken to the confidence aspect and how to maybe generate some of that in yourself. If you can put that thought in the back of your mind as we walk through a couple other questions for you, maybe some success stories, and then toward the end of the webinar, as we maybe look at some tools that we can take away, maybe some key things that our audience can do to build that confidence, because they're looking for that in speakers and they expect that of themselves. And one other note that I want to make, we're at the halfway point here, and we've received one question, which is a great question. I'm going to get to it in a minute. What I would encourage you to do, if you're listening, watching, that if you have a question that you'd like to have answered, or you don't feel like it's being answered, shoot that into the Q&A, and that's how we're going to kind of close up, is with some of these questions. This question, I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there so you can think about it, and it may factor into your success story. But the question is, have any of you had an aha moment that made public speaking easier for you? So has there been something a light bulb moment? And so I throw this out there, and if you need to think about it for a minute. But our next question for each of you, starting with Andrew, is what would be what you would consider your mic drop moment, i.e. your most you look back at all the different speeches you've given, and it was that one speech that you just nailed it?
This one's pretty easy for me, Nehemiah. So I got the recognition behind it, so that's the reason why I know that it was my aha moment. But so at our district meeting, everyone in our company knows that I'm safety driven, and I was a safety manager for a little while throughout Kiewit, and I made everybody make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. They can make it any way they wanted. It was their world, and I pushed them just a little bit. Right? I led them with a few questions. They made their sandwich. They told me about it, how great it was. They all took a bite. Well, when you eat peanut butter, you can't talk very well, right? So then I made them all grab a box, and then I eliminated something that they could use: their hands, their eyes. One guy I put in crutches, so he couldn't use, he had to hobble over to the table and hobble back. And I gave the description of, we need to keep our people safe, and we need to understand that, our people are what's our most important asset. And when we got done, our safety director of all of Kiewit came up and said, "Hey, I want to use this. Can I steal all this from you, or do you want to go to site and teach it?" And I said, "No, take it. Like, it's all about just giving information, and if you want it, you can have all my notes too." So immediately when I got done, I got that first initial recognition, like, "Hey, you did a great job." And then at the end of our presentations for the day, I got the award of best presenter. Well, I thought my presentation went well, and then I started reading through all the comments and the critiques behind it, and it was, you set this person up for success, and you led into the right question, and you gave the opportunity for failure, but the way that you worded it, it was knocked out of the park. So having that ability to maybe influence the answer of your question, if you're going to have people on stage with you, and understand that it can go the opposite way. So make sure you plan for that as well. So that was my mic drop moment. It was the greatest presentation that I've had thus far. Always looking to improve, but that was my mic drop moment.
So what was it? What were the prime? I mean, you listed some of the things. You told us what you did. What was like the one or two primary things that made it such a success?
I would say being able to see and impact the whole audience of, if we are not safe, this is the outcome that our employees will have at home. Most of us have either grandchildren or kids or a little brother and sister that we've always either made a peanut butter sandwich for or made a meal for, and to be able to not have their hand or their sight or ability to move to do that for them. It's not just about the workplace, it's about us living after work, right? Work is just a means to a family life. And I guess the impact that I didn't know was gonna happen, like to 300 people, and all of them to be like, okay, like, I'm sitting back in my chair now and I'm reflecting on life. I think that's a home run, and that's the whole reason why you speak, right? To get your message across and for it to impact the people.
That's really good. So you took a generally dull topic that everybody doesn't look forward to, the monthly meeting, and you applied it successfully to their personal life. You drew their emotions into it. You drew their personal experience into this dull topic, and you brought it alive to them.
Right. And like the other panelists have said, it's doing what's passionate to you, and you're more successful when you're passionate on speaking, like Mike said. That's exactly where I was in my moment.
That's good. That's good. Maria, what was your mic drop?
Yeah, this is, again, I'm in a different environment, but this was to the medical students, and the topic had to do with screening for domestic violence. And you should know that this is something that physicians don't want to do. It's like opening a Pandora's box. And also, if the patient does say that there's some issue at home or they're unsafe, then what do they do? There aren't resources available. So it's a very difficult topic, and one that is difficult to make a connection and make a difference. And like some of the suggestions that were coming up, I told the story and I tried to explain what the world looks like through the eyes of a child who is living in an unsafe environment, and then how, as they're growing up, that's their view of the world. So I went detail by detail, explaining, telling the story, but also creating empathy and for their patient. And then also, of course, it was going to be critical, to have some resources for them, so that the doctors wouldn't feel lost, and that they would have something to a place to refer the woman and the family to. But I think what was really important was the story and the empathy and the connection with the doctors. And at the end, they were clapping. And one of the administrators out in the hallway heard this clapping. And so she was like, well, there must be something really good going on in there. And so I hope that I made a difference in their lives, that they were going to be able to see this topic, and more importantly, that they would be able to take the time and see their patients in a different way. So I felt like I was making a difference in the lives of people, and that felt good.
That's so powerful. You took safety is a boring topic in Andrew's world. Psychological evaluation is a normal, like, that's like the peanut butter and jelly of your world. Like, that's what everybody that's their normal life. You took what can be a dull or topic that you would resist, and you use the power of storytelling to tie that into people's minds and motivate them in a different way.
Yeah,
that's powerful.
And also trying to relate it to their lives, that, they were, when they got tired of listening to me, they were going to get to go home, and they were going to get to feel safe and be in their room and turn on the music and relax. And a child going home from school, into an abusive family, doesn't have, they're afraid to go home. And so, kind of pointing out those differences, making the relationship between their life and the patient's life, I think was helpful.
That's really good. That's very good. Fantastic. Mike, what was a mic drop moment for you, particularly given the context into which you were speaking, and what made it so?
Well, my mic drop moment was speaking on second chance programs. I'd attended a seminar on that, and I got really concerned that people who are incarcerated coming out had no chance at all because they couldn't get a job because they had a felony or a major misdemeanor, and therefore ended right back up. And because companies were resistant to hire these people. Well, the manufacturers, of course, had shortages of people, so I held a meeting on second chance program, and I had the person from Killer Bread come into Chicago and made her presentation on hiring second chance people who would become executives at their company. I had the people from Chicago come in and talk about their second chance programs, and really laid out to people that it really was for the good of all, including ourselves and them, that we provided a vehicle for hiring these people. And the proof of how well it went was the fact that 3 to 5 companies actually participated in hiring second chance. In the past, they had all said no way, they were afraid to, and didn't want to get involved in that. And that has ended up impacting the lives of a lot of people coming out of incarceration to be able to stay out of incarceration. And that, to me, I was so happy for having done that. And that was my mic drop.
It's incredible. So you use the power of influence, the power of experience, other people's stories, and other people's positive experiences to motivate your audience in the direction that you wanted to motivate them.
Absolutely.
So This is great. Just these stories are incredible, and the mic drops that can transform your speech from a yawn fest to a standing ovation when that's not even what you're looking for. So Matt, I'm going to get to you in just a second. I want to mention to those who are listening and watching, as we right before we finish, right at the end, I'm gonna send out a poll before we finish the webinar of what else you're looking for, or what other ideas, concepts would you like to hear. And I mention that now because there's so much that I'm hearing right now. I'm hearing the power of the power of storytelling. I'm hearing personal relating, like relating it to people's personal lives, the power of experience or positive feedback. There's these different topics that are coming up that I want to sit here and say, let's stretch this the rest of the afternoon and learn more. So as you're listening to each, like to Matt's experience and then some of the wrap up material, think of what you would like to see more of. And before we finish, I'm going to put that poll up and you can kind of give us some of your feedback. So Matt, if you would round us out here and just provide us with that mic drop moment, and if there was an aha moment that contributed to it, and then what was it that made it such a mic drop moment?
Yeah, thank you, Nehemiah. I'm going to take a little different, I guess, angle, on my mic drop from what I've heard. I mean, which are great stories. I'm going to give a little maybe a different perspective, just maybe more internal. So what happened in my situation was we had to put a presentation quickly together and deliver it within a few hours. So I had to muster a team of people because I wasn't the expert on the material. I didn't know it. And I had to muster resources to help me build the slides. And then at that point, it became obvious that I was facing a wimp junction. That wimp junction is that point where you can wimp out and have somebody else give the presentation because you're not the expert, because you don't have the confidence. And then at that wimp junction, you say, no, I'm going to take lead on this. No, I'm going to give this presentation. I'm going to own it. And at that point, you start looking at the slides differently as the content is being built. You start looking at it going, how am I going to talk about this? How am I going to talk about that? And so to me, that mic drop moment is whenever you're put into a tough situation in a public speaking world, it is don't wimp out. Whenever you're faced at that inflection point, right, where you could go down or you could go up, that's wimp junction, where you decide, am I going to do this or not? And then do it. And you do it scared. We all do it scared. And I think that's something to convey, that we all get scared. We all get nervous. You embrace it, but don't wimp out. And in this case, we had 20 minutes to go and before the presentation. And I said, okay, guys, let's break. Let's get back on in 20 minutes. I need to review everything. And I'm putting my talking points together. And we knocked it out. It went fantastic. Not because I was the smartest one in the room, not because I was the smartest one giving the presentation, not because I owned the material, but I showed up because I saw wimp junction and I'm like, not today, Matt. You're not going to wimp out today. I hope that gives a little bit of a different perspective, that inner monologue of whenever you can run or you can face it and dig in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually very powerful, particularly for those who are less comfortable with the concept right now, or maybe who don't have as much experience. I had a moment like that myself last October. There was a presentation that I was supposed to give, and it wasn't coming together the way that I thought it should. And I was ready to wimp out. And I actually had colleagues who really pushed me, hey, no, you can do this. Let's put all this material together. So that experience, Matt, is really powerful for understanding that you harnessed your internal will. I guess you willed yourself to do it. And something that I would expect, and tell me if I'm just being foolishly optimistic here, But it seems like many who, especially in the beginning of their public speaking career, and especially if they seem to be really good or they've got really good information to say, it seems like there's a lot of people winging it, not in a bad way, but they're just saying, I don't know everything that I'm doing. I don't know everything that I need to know about this concept, but I'm just going to go do it. I mean, would that be a little accurate?
You have to have guts sometimes 5 seconds at a time. Sometimes it's just that simple. Guts 5 seconds at a time. And one more story here. My girlfriend was having to do a presentation to a bunch of doctors, and she was scared out of her mind. I mean, she's not a public speaker, and she doesn't know what to do. And she prepared and prepared and prepared. And she, was that total expert in the room. She was the smartest one on the call. I had to keep telling her that you're smarter than the doctors you're talking to. You know this material better than you think. And then she got on the Zoom call, and I was there to give IT backup in case there was a problem. And she was like, Matt, nobody else has their cameras turned on. And I'm going, so what? You're not going to wimp out on my watch. Turn your camera on. And she's like, okay. And so she turned her camera on. And I wasn't going to let her wimp out. And my point to that is, like you brought it up a little bit earlier, having that accountability partners, having people to help you and get you going. That's a big part of it too.
No one does it alone.
Right.
That's good. Well, there's so many different directions you can go with this, and there's so much that contributes to this. And as we mentioned, kind of at the beginning, this is a really high level. There's 4 of you here. You could spend a whole hour talking about one of your stories and your capabilities. You all have demonstrated a really a valuable, critical component of public speaking, and that is succinctness. Succinctness and what I like to refer to as crispiness. You've kept it crispy, and you've given us something that we can take, we can put it in our pocket, and we can carry that with us. So what I'll ask is as we wrap up, we've got just a couple minutes left. I just want to kind of open the floor a little bit. There's a couple of you that have had something that you started to get into, or maybe you could have shared more. And there's some concepts some ideas that we've discussed beforehand as well. And starting with you, Mike, what's kind of a key takeaway? Because this is such high level, we could leave it at high level and go away with great information. But what's one key takeaway that you would send home with our audiences?
Well, first of all, seek help. You can't, as Matt said, and Andrew and Maria, you do need help. You're not the expert until you become the expert. And if you're going to pursue what you're going to pursue, do it with the passion. I've used that word passion a lot on this, but I use it a lot when I worked also. Don't do anything without passion. Otherwise, why are you doing it? You won't do it well. And so that's my key takeaways for them.
That's good. That's good. So seek help and harness your passion.
Absolutely.
Maria?
I agree with Mike. I think I would add, it's important to know your audience, to have some sense of what it is they want to know. You're speaking to them, so you want to be at their level. And, I always like to get information about the audience ahead of time and also what they're interested in. I agree, the passion's really important, and the empathy with the audience, be organized, be prepared, and that it's normal to be a little nervous. It's good to be a little bit nervous, and you can do this. You just have to practice. And I think it's good to hear that voice, sort of your internal coach. If you don't have Matt around to be your back. But I'm going to call you next time, Matt.
Not on my watch.
You can do this. You can do this. So.
If you if you have a wimp out moment, you know who to call.
Yeah.
Andrew, what's one thing that you would leave with us, and maybe also what's one particular thing that would be that little tweak maybe that could help us get just a little bit better?
I think the tweak that makes everybody a better speaker is to be yourself. Right? Don't try to talk like somebody else does. Don't try to mimic what us four have done here, because ultimately you're your person and you're going to feel more comfortable and you're going to have more confidence if you're just you. You know, if you're shy, it's okay to be shy while you're up there speaking. Stick to the points. If you're an extrovert and you like to tell jokes, do that. But you have to be you. If you're not you, you're going to struggle until you find yourself.
Yep.
That's so good. There's a CEO of a online SaaS company that I've been following the last couple of days, and multiple times he's indicated differentiate through authenticity. Let your authenticity be your differentiating factor. That's good. Matt, will you round us out here?
I think it's whenever you face that wimp junction. At any level, at any presentation, even if it's talking to two people across the table, you know, don't wimp out. You know, go do it scared. And what I have found every time I faced wimp junction and then went through it anyways, I found out that it really wasn't that bad anyways. My brain was just catastrophizing. And I just have to learn that, okay, my brain catastrophizes, just go do it anyways. Go do it scared.
That's good. Do it scared. Don't wait for everything to be in line, and don't wait to be completely confident about it all. Just go do it.
Let's go do it. Do it scared.
So this is good. So much experience that we can take away. So many stories to help with our confidence. I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll really quick. As we round out, what is a focus area you would like to hear about more? And as you're filling this out, this webinar has been kind of a broader effort by the Young Professionals Group and the Women's Alliance Network at FPSA to provide additional resources for the professional world to increase our speaking abilities. And so there's many topics that we can address, many other things that we can talk about. There's several things that we wish to address if we had more time. So looks like about half of you have voted. If really this is interesting. About half of you want to just hear more about finding your voice. Just what you talk about authenticity, Andrew. Some people don't know what is their authentic self? What do they really want to say, Mike? You know, what is their passion? And so wanting to hear a little bit about how to find that real you and how to find the real passion that you can speak to. So it's good. I want to thank you all for joining us. I appreciate your investment in all of us today. I know that I believe we're going to be sending out a kind of an executive summary to take away, to put in your notes folder. And with that will also come some additional ideas, concepts of what we'll be doing in the future for this professional development and public speaking portion of our professional development. And after that, with that, if there's something that you want to specifically hear about, we want to do this again. This is extremely beneficial, extremely valuable. Each one of you have done all of us a huge favor by providing real value for all of us. So Matt, Mike, Andrew, Maria, thank you all. And thank you for your investment today.
Thank you, Nehemiah.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you all for joining our webinar, and we will look forward to seeing you on the next. All the best.